Hey, what's going on, everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are here to talk about the huge banner restricted update that just happened on December 4th. A lot of different things to talk about. Couple different cards were banned in different formats, as well as an unbanning that's surprising to some, but surprising not really in other ways, because they did kind of mention that they were planning on unbanning a card in Pioneer. So we're going to go and hop right into it here. So Pioneer, the big Pioneer updates, Karn the Great Creator, banned in the format. I know a lot of people have been talking about it for quite some time, and it finally is now banned. They also banned Newcomer Geological Appraiser because of the Temur Appraiser combo deck, which we'll kind of talk more about that in a moment, as well as Smuggler's Copter being unbanned. It was originally banned in 2021, and it is now currently unbanned, which is very, very interesting, and obviously we'll be talking more about Smuggler's Copter here in just a moment. The other two big formats that were shaken up. So Modern Fury is banned. The first of the Elemental incarnations, probably won't be the last. I'm a little surprised that it was the first as a whole, but I'm definitely happy to see that the card is now banned, as well as Up the Beanstalk, new card from Wilds of Eldraine, enchantment that's just very, very good at drawing cards. It's extremely powerful in Modern. Definitely not surprised to see that go overall. In the last format we have to talk about is Pauper. Monster Swiftspear was banned in Pauper, which I think was surprising to a lot of people that play Pauper, especially when they kind of talked about the overall Pauper breakdown of like win percentages and such. I haven't played a lot of Pauper recently, but I know when I did play, Burn was extremely strong, and that was even without Monster Swiftspear. So I have to imagine now just Burn with Swiftspear is extremely powerful. So first thing I want to talk about, I'm going to be skipping over Modern a little bit here, just because with Modern, it's a lot more simple, and I wanted to dive into Pioneer first specifically before hopping into Modern. So Pioneer, decks that improve, these are kind of the decks that I think are going to get better with the overall banning. So Rakdos Midrange, I think, is the biggest winner for the most part. I would say Mono Green had a generally pretty favorable matchup against Rakdos Midrange. I feel like for Rakdos Midrange to be able to win that matchup, they just had to have constant interaction. Like it was always, Thoughtseize, push your elf, kill another creature, that kind of thing. And if they just go like Harvester into like Fable the Mirror Breaker, I feel like they pretty much just lost for the most part. So they just needed so much interaction for that matchup. And now that deck it's not gone, it's nerfed. I think that Rakdos Midrange is one of the biggest winners. I also think that Blue-White Lotus Control is going to be a lot better. And part of the reason I think that is because pretty much all the other aggro decks in the format got better. Regardless of even if they're playing Smuggler's Copter or not, I think overall just Lotus Control got a lot better. There's going to be a lot more aggro decks running around, and Lotus Control is going to be, obviously they play Farewell and Supreme Verdict, and they're going to be able to clean up those creatures very, very efficiently. And as well as I mentioned before, I think aggro decks, obviously, I think the humans and the spirits decks get a little bit better, but as a whole, I would say it's like the tier 2 aggro decks are the decks that get slightly better, as well as Izzet and Soul. I think Karn was just really, really good against them because they're not able to activate a lot of their very powerful artifacts that they play in their deck, and now that Karn's out of the way, I think Izzet and Soul is going to be a pretty solid deck. I'm not saying it's going to be tier 1 or anything like that, but definitely with Copter returning to an already pretty strong deck, I think Izzet and Soul is going to be a solid like tier 1.5, tier 2 deck overall in the metagame. So next thing to talk about is Modern real quick. So Modern is kind of, I don't think there's a really definitive answer for the most part what decks are going to rise to the top of the metagame. But in my opinion, I think the two that get a lot better is Izzet Murktide and Yawgmoth combo. Pretty simply put, I think Murktide with less answers to Ragavan is going to help it a lot. Is there answers? Obviously, yes. I'm not trying to say that there's no answers for Ragavan still, but definitely Fury being gone is pretty huge. And then obviously Yawgmoth combo, Fury's able to kill most of their board. They get less value from it overall, and Yawgmoth combo, it just gets better. I really think it does. I think the deck's kind of been secretly good. Obviously people do put up a lot of results with it, but I think the deck ultimately just gets better as a whole. And then I'm not going to be talking about Pauper, mostly because there was a huge breakdown that's way better than anything I'll ever be able to talk about that's on Wizards main channel, or it's on Good Morning Magic, one of the two. you should definitely check that out if you're interested in the Pauper metagame, especially since it's not something that I am well versed in myself. So, okay, so I labeled this final thoughts, but this is really more than just final thoughts. This is kind of my quick summary of, I think, how this overall is going to go. So it hasn't been released yet, but very soon, the second episode of our podcast we do on the channel here goes way more into detail with all of my thoughts and everybody else on the podcast thoughts about the overall changes, but I'm just going to give my brief explanation. So Karn, obviously he's huge for the format. They've been talking about how it's been not oppressive, but just really annoying and frustrating play patterns for years now, and they ultimately decided to just ban the card, which I personally am a big fan with. I know a lot of people wanted either Karn or Nykthos banned, and we ended up seeing Karn banned, which I personally like. Wizards of the Coast has talked about for a while now that they like having Nykthos be a pillar of the format regardless of what color it is. Obviously mono green is the deck that definitely takes advantage of it the most, but mono green without Karn is still a very functional deck. They usually play like a Vivian Arkbow Ranger, Steel Leaf Stompy package, and it's very strong. It's a strong deck, but it's definitely not way too strong. So definitely happy to see Nykthos not get the boot on that. Appraiser, I'm happy about and sad about, because that combo deck was pretty crazy. Unless you had a very specific piece of interaction, your opponent just goes turn 3 or 4 Geological Appraiser, and the game is over. It's unfortunate because, you know, obviously for those who follow the channel here, I do a lot of like Gruul aggro decks, and I had a few decks that I was working with Geological Appraiser, and now I don't even get to play those because of Eldritch Evolution and Friends, which is kind of unfortunate. But honestly, I'd rather have Appraiser be banned than have to worry about that deck in the format as a whole. So definitely unsurprising to see it go. They did not nerf, obviously, or ban anything from the Quintorius combo deck, which I think is a good move. The deck is still, it's not quite as consistent, I would roughly say, or it is kind of consistent, but it takes a little bit longer for the deck to get going. So I do like that they said that they'd kind of wait and see what happens and then kind of go from there if they need to, which is definitely a good call. I'm very happy to see Smuggler's Copter unban. I think aggro decks have been needing a little bit of a boost in the format, mostly because the only aggro decks that really have been able to succeed as of late is like Boros Convoke, which it's an aggro deck, but it doesn't really feel like an aggro deck. And then Spirits and Humans, which are obviously the more traditional aggro decks. So we'll kind of see what happens with Smuggler's Copter. The deck that part of the reason it was banned, which was mono black aggro, isn't even a deck anymore. It's not even close to being a deck in the format. So we'll see what happens, but I think Smuggler's Copter overall is going to be a positive for the format. We'll see what happens though. I don't think it's going to be too good. I know some people are very concerned. Personally, I am not, but we'll kind of see what happens. And then with Modern, Fury and Up the Beanstalk are banned. Definitely a lot of debate with those for sure. A lot of people were calling for Grief to be banned, or Fury and Grief to be banned. They were talking about Orcish Bowmaster, the One Ring. There was a lot of cards that for sure had potential to be banned. I think Fury and Up the Beanstalk were the minimum cards to be banned for the format to kind of help it a little bit. The big gripe, especially with two people on Twitter, I'm not going to name them, but, you know, for those who follow Magic Twitter, you probably know who I'm talking about, going back and forth about Fury and everything like that. There was definitely some good arguments made on both sides to it, but I think Fury was the I would say the biggest blowout card. You know, like, it's like, oh, well, it kills X1s. There's still Bowmaster and Wrenn and 6. Yeah, but they just kill one. They kill one. Wrenn and 6 maybe will kill two. Fury can just wreck an entire board, especially if you go Fury, not dead after all, bring it back, boom, 4 more damage. So Fury definitely needed to go. And especially as the Gruul Mage, as someone who has cast a lot of Furies, I'm glad to see it go just because of the fact that it feels like whenever I build a deck, especially if it's red and modern, it's basically like 4 Fury. I have to include the card just because of how efficient and how powerful it is. So it's kind of nice to see that I don't have to really do that so much anymore. Obviously, I'm sure I'll probably lose to more like aggro decks and stuff like that, but which, quite frankly, not that there's a lot of aggro decks in the format. So it's going to be a little harder to kill things overall, but I'm not really upset about it for the most part. Fury is just a very, very absurd card, and quite frankly, I hate it when my opponent's Fury and kill my entire board more than, more than me actually being able to play the card. Then Up the Beanstalk, obviously just an extremely efficient draw spell. It's very telling when players would rather cascade into Up the Beanstalk then instead of like Crashing Footfalls. I think that's a very telling and compelling argument as to why the card should be banned. I have not been playing a lot of Modern as of late. I still do keep up with the format and definitely agree on Up the Beanstalk. And then kind of like what Wizards of the Coast said, they're going to keep an eye on Orcish Bowmaster and the One Ring, and we'll kind of see what happens. Obviously, with the new bans that just happened, we could see them rise to the top of the metagame, but only time will tell, so we'll kind of see what happens over the next couple months. And then they even said that I think the next main ban restricted announcement's like in March. So we'll see what happens until then. Maybe in March we're going to be like, yes, please ban the One Ring, but we will see what happens with that. And then obviously, once again, with Pauper, I'm not a big Pauper expert. If you were a big Pauper expert, let me know in the comment section below. What do you think about the bans that happened with that? They also talked about how they almost banned Tolarian Terror and All That Glitters. Just let me know what your opinions are on that below. And then obviously, there's going to be a couple people that don't that say something if I don't mention it. With Legacy and Vintage, they liked where the metagames are at. There's a couple cards that they are keeping watch on currently in the metagame, and we'll kind of see what happens going forward. So that's really all I have to say about that. So, all right, I'd like to thank everybody for watching this video. Definitely a very positive, in my opinion, ban and restricted update. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about the overall ban and restricted update. Is there any card that they didn't include, or is there a card on here that definitely should not have been banned or unbanned in Smuggler's Copter? Just let me know in the comment section below. So, I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.